You're watching the most powerful naval force ever built. And in this simulation, you're not facing one rival, you're facing all of them at once. China, Europe, Russia, every navy that can sail. So here's the question we can't dodge. Can they crack a U.S. carrier strike group? Or do you watch the world bounce off America's steel wall? Before we start, you need one rule. A carrier isn't a lone giant. It's a moving city protected by layers. The carrier sits at the center, but around it are cruisers and destroyers tied into the Aegis combat system, submarines hunting quietly out front, and aircraft sweeping the sky. When you hear carrier, picture a team, built to fight as one. So how would the rest of Earth try to stop it? They'd try distance first. Long-range missiles, submarines, waves of aircraft. China brings modern surface ships and a dense coastal defense network. Russia brings submarines and long-range strike experience. European navies bring capable ships and professional crews. On paper, it sounds overwhelming. But the moment you add geography and logistics, the math changes. To reach a carrier group, they have to cross oceans. And oceans buy you time. Time to detect, time to reposition, time to concentrate force. A carrier group doesn't sit still and wait. It moves, it feints. It operates under a protective umbrella of sensors, aircraft, and escorts. And with access to friendly ports and airborne refueling, that reach stretches even farther. Could a coordinated strike still be dangerous? Absolutely. You never treat modern missiles and submarines like a joke. But dangerous isn't the same as breakthrough. To punch through layered defenses, you need accurate targeting on a moving target, sustained pressure, and near-perfect coordination, while you're being jammed, intercepted, and hunted. That's hard in any fight. It's even harder when you're trying to do it far from home. And here's the reality. A clean, decisive penetration is unlikely, not because opponents lack courage or capability, but because the carrier group was designed for this exact problem: layered defense, mobility, and relentless training. In this simulation, the sea doesn't become their highway. It becomes your moat. But if you can't break the fortress from the water, you try something else. Next, we watch them gamble on the one move that could change everything: putting boots on United States shores. You wake up to an alert on your phone. Not a rumor, not a drill. In this simulation, fleets have moved, and the plan is blunt. Put ground forces on American soil. If you live on the West Coast, your mind jumps to California. If you live on the East Coast, you picture the Atlantic shoreline, and you ask the only question that matters: can anyone actually get here in force? To answer that, you have to understand what an invasion really requires. Not just warships, weight, thousands of troops, heavy vehicles, fuel, food, spare parts, medical support, constant resupply, air cover, secure ports or beaches, a steady flow across thousands of miles of ocean. If that flow breaks, even briefly, the landing force starts running out of the things that keep it moving. Now, you watch the map. One task force aims for Southern California. Another angles toward the mid-Atlantic in the Northeast. On paper, you can draw arrows straight at Los Angeles and New York. In real life, those arrows have to cross the Pacific or the Atlantic, while U.S. submarines and aircraft hunt for you every hour. You have to protect slow transport ships, not just fast escorts. You have to do it far from your own bases, far from your own repair yards, far from your own airfields. And even if an amphibious group reaches the coast, the hardest part still hasn't started: getting established. Beaches aren't empty, ports aren't free. Modern ports have narrow approaches and critical choke points, cranes, fuel depots, loading zones that are easy to disable and hard to replace. Beaches that look perfect on a map can be cut by cliffs, rocks, heavy surf, or miles of built-up coastline that leaves nowhere to spread out. And you can't hide a large landing in the modern world. Satellites, aircraft, and sensors see the buildup long before the first ramp drops. The invasion isn't a surprise, it's an appointment. Then you hit the real shield: American geography. The United States has two vast oceans as buffers. It has long coastlines, but only certain stretches can support a large landing with supply. And behind those coasts, you don't find open plains leading straight to victory. You find dense cities, mountains, deserts, forests, rivers, and long distances between targets. The moment you push inland, your supply line stretches. Every mile makes it thinner. Every mile makes it easier to cut, and you aren't landing into a helpless country. You're landing into the world's biggest logistics machine, backed by guard and reserve forces, local law enforcement, and a population that can mobilize fast when it believes the homeland is at stake. The U.S. also has the home field advantage that decides wars, interior lines. It can move forces across its own roads, rails, and airfields far faster than any attacker can move reinforcements across an ocean. So, what happens in this simulation? The first wave tries. Small footholds appear, then stall. Not because Americans are flawless, but because the attacker can't feed the beachhead fast enough, can't replace losses fast enough, and can't protect a long, exposed supply chain under constant pressure. The ocean that carried them becomes the problem that defeats them. And as those beachheads fade on the map, you feel the fight shift again. If they can't take America by landing troops, they'll try to squeeze it another way. Next comes the siege, the blockade, and the test of what you can make, grow, and fuel inside your own borders. You feel it before you see it. Not on a battlefield, inside your routine. In this simulation, the world stops trying to land on American shores and switches to a colder plan. Isolate you. No dramatic beach footage, no flags in the sand, just pressure. Shipping routes shift. Insurance rates jump. Trade slows. And the goal is simple: make you run out of what you need. So you start doing what everyone does when the system gets tense. You check the basics: food, fuel, power. The things that decide whether life stays normal or starts to tighten. First, food. A blockade sounds like empty shelves, but the reality is messier. The United States produces a massive amount of food. In normal years, it grows more than it needs in key crops and produces huge amounts of meat and dairy. In this scenario, the question isn't, do we have calories? It's, can we keep the machine moving? Because food isn't just fields, it's fertilizer, farm diesel, packaging, trucking, cold storage. If ports slow down, some imports get scarce and prices rise. The things you're used to seeing year-round start behaving like they used to, seasonal. Coffee gets expensive. Certain fruits become occasional. Specialty products turn into luxuries. But you still eat, you still feed your family. The pressure is real, but it doesn't break you. Next, fuel. This is where people panic because everyone pictures gas lines. But the fuel story isn't simply no oil. The U.S. produces a lot of oil and natural gas, and it has a huge refining system. The weak point is distribution and refining mix. Pipelines, regional refineries. The right fuel in the right place at the right time. So, you get uneven pain. Some regions see shortages and spikes while others stay steadier. In this simulation, the government prioritizes essentials. Farming, freight, emergency services, and the military. You drive less. Flights drop, non-essential travel shrinks. The country feels constrained, but it keeps running. Then, replacement. A siege doesn't only target what you consume, it targets what you replace. Electronics, rare materials, machine parts, and specific chemicals become harder to get quickly. You feel it when repairs take longer, when certain products vanish from shelves, when a 2-day fix turns into a 2-month wait. Companies redesign around what they can source locally. Factories shift to simpler versions of goods. The economy slows, but it adapts. Now zoom out to the oceans. Can the rest of the world actually seal America off? It's harder than it sounds. The U.S. Navy and Air Force can defend key lanes near North America, and the coastline is long, with many ports. A perfect blockade requires constant ships, constant surveillance, constant resupply, maintained far from the blockading country's home bases. That's expensive, it's hard to sustain, and it's vulnerable to disruption. Over time, the siege becomes less like a lock on America and more like a drag on global shipping. And while the outside world tries to squeeze, you do what nations always do under pressure. You reorganize. You ration some things. You substitute others. You ramp up production where you can. You cut waste. You focus on essentials. The mood stays tense. The headlines stay rough. But the basics hold. By the end of this phase, you understand the real story of the siege. The United States doesn't collapse from lack of food or oil. It absorbs the hit, adjusts, and keeps going. And that sets up the final outcome: a battered world, a reshaped economy, and an America that's still standing, alone, bruised, but intact. You reach the end of the simulation, and the result feels strange at first. Not fireworks, not a clean victory parade. What you see instead is a world that tried to do the impossible, and paid for it. And you see an America that looks bruised, stressed, and more alone than it has been in generations, but still standing. Think back to what the world tried. It tried to break U.S. naval power at distance, and learned the first hard truth. Carrier groups aren't single targets, they're moving systems. Layered defense, constant training, discipline under pressure. Then it tried to land forces on American shores, and learned the second truth. Oceans aren't highways. They're barriers that punish slow ships, long supply lines, and any plan that depends on perfect timing. Then it tried the siege, the blockade, and it discovered the third truth. The United States can feed itself, fuel itself, and reorganize faster than outsiders can sustain pressure across two vast oceans. But survival doesn't mean comfort. In this outcome, your daily life changes. Imports stay limited. Prices stay high. Travel stays reduced. Some products become memories from before. You notice it in store aisles, in delayed repairs, in the quiet shock of fewer choices. And you notice a deeper shift in priorities. The country pours investment into domestic manufacturing, energy systems, ports, shipyards, and critical materials. Businesses simplify supply chains. Communities lean harder on local production. Resilience stops being a slogan and becomes the shape of your life. Now, zoom out. The rest of the world looks worse. When multiple nations commit ships, aircraft, money, and political focus to one massive effort, they drain themselves. Trade between other countries shrinks. Insurance and shipping costs stay elevated. Economies that depend on steady global commerce struggle to rebound. Rival regions turn inward as shortages and competition grow. You don't need dramatic scenes to understand it. You see it in the slow grind of numbers. Weaker growth, disrupted supply chains, governments dealing with pressure at home while trying to project power far away, and then you're left with the strategic lesson. The United States is hard to invade not because it's flawless, but because it has rare advantages that stack together. Space, two oceans, strong internal transport networks, enormous productive capacity, and a military built to operate across distance. Geography plus logistics creates something most countries can't copy: depth. The deeper an attacker goes, the harder it becomes to keep going. So, what's the final outcome? In this simulation, the world fails to defeat the United States directly. America doesn't win by taking territory or forcing everyone to agree. It wins in the simplest sense. You keep your country. You keep your independence. You keep the ability to decide your own future. And that ending matters because it's not about fantasy. It's about what you do with the lesson. You don't take safety for granted. You protect supply lines. You invest in infrastructure. You support readiness. You value allies, but you also make sure you can stand on your own. When the credits roll, it doesn't feel like a simple story. It feels like a warning and a reminder at the same time. The world can shake you. It can pressure you. It can make life harder. But in this simulation, it can't erase the United States from the map. And that turns into something personal. When everything else becomes uncertain, you still wake up under the same flag in the same country, your future still in your hands.